It started with a knock I didn't expect. Not the kind of knock that says, "Neighbor," but the kind that carries bad news dressed in perfume. It was a late Friday evening in Austin. The bourbon glass sweated on my coffee table, half empty, TV murmuring low. Rain pressed against the windows, turning the streetlights into long yellow ghosts. I almost didn't open the door. But curiosity, that old fool, made me get up. When I did, there she was. "Hi, Dad," said Emily. My daughter hadn't called me in 6 months. Now she stood there with perfect hair, designer heels, and a look that said she wasn't here to talk about family. Beside her, a man leaned against the porch post. Younger, confident, eyes like a bank loan, calculating, pleasant on the surface. "Mr. Carson," he said, stretching out his hand. "Ryan. Emily's fiancé." Fiancé. News to me. I shook his hand anyway. Cold, firm, rehearsed. They stepped in without asking. The smell of rain followed them inside, along with trouble. Emily's voice was sugar with a razor under it. "You've let this place go, Dad. You should really think about downsizing." "Downsizing?" I poured another drink. "You mean selling the house?" Ryan smiled politely. "It's a big property for one person. Market's strong right now. You could get 7 figures easy." I stared at them both. "This is the house your mother and I built. Every nail, every beam, she picked it. You were born here." Emily's eyes flickered. "Exactly. It's sentimental. But memories don't pay bills." I set the glass down a little harder than I meant to. "Bills are paid." She smiled. That new kind of smile, polite, empty. "Dad, we just want what's best for you." They stayed 20 minutes. Most of it, Ryan talked numbers, renovation ideas, opportunities. Emily chimed in about fresh starts and retirement comfort. I listened like a ghost in my own living room. When they left, Ryan turned at the door. "You'll think about it," he said. Not a question. I nodded once, though inside something cracked. After the door closed, the house went silent again. But not the same silence. It was heavier, meaner. I looked at the old family photo on the mantel, Emily at 10, missing a front tooth, laughing between her mother and me. Now she wanted to sell it all. The bourbon burned differently that night. I didn't know it yet, but that visit ended more than one life as it used to be. 2 weeks later, I got the letter. Thick white envelope. Legal seal. My name spelled correctly, rare for junk mail. Inside, notice of intent to foreclose. I called my lawyer immediately. He said the mortgage had been quietly refinanced 3 months earlier, signed digitally, under my name. Documents filed, notarized. Only one problem, I hadn't signed a damn thing. The bank clerk confirmed it over the phone. "Yes, Mr. Carson, your daughter Emily is listed as authorized co-signer on the estate." My voice caught. "That's impossible." "Sir, she presented power of attorney, granted by you." I hung up before I said something that would land me in jail. That night I sat in the dark with the papers spread across the table. Her handwriting was there, familiar, rounded, careful. My forged signature beside it, perfect enough to fool the system. Rain again, hard and loud. The kind of storm that makes old walls groan. I whispered to myself, "She took my house." But a deeper voice answered, "No, she took your name." The confrontation came on a Sunday morning. Emily called, voice bright as sunlight. "Dad, let's have brunch, okay? Ryan wants to show you something." I went. Curiosity again. Or maybe I needed to see how far she'd fall. The restaurant was new, white marble, big windows, people who wore sunglasses indoors. Emily waved from a corner booth. Ryan was there too, scrolling through his phone. "Dad." She hugged me. It was quick, mechanical. I smelled her perfume and my stomach turned, synthetic sweetness masking rot. I ordered black coffee. Ryan smiled like a salesman. "So, about the house?" I kept my face still. "Yes. Let's talk about the house. He pulled out a folder. Inside were glossy prints, real estate photos. Wide-angle shots of my living room, my porch, the oak tree out front. We had a photographer come by. Just to get a sense of potential. Market value could reach $1, $2 million if we list soon. My pulse slowed, not sped up. That's the thing about betrayal. You stop being shocked, you start watching. Emily leaned forward. Dad, listen. You can move into one of those retirement condos near Barton Springs. It's beautiful. Pool, garden, full staff. We'll handle everything. We? I said quietly. She hesitated. Ryan and I. We've already spoken to the agent. So you've decided? I said. And I'm just the signature. Ryan's smile didn't fade. It's really the logical move, sir. The property taxes alone. I cut him off. Don't call me sir. Emily's eyes hardened. Dad, don't be dramatic. I let that sit. Then I said low, you forged my signature. The table went quiet. A fork clinked in the distance. Someone laughed at another table. Ryan recovered first. That's a serious accusation. Serious as the warrant that's coming your way. I said. I slid a copy of the foreclosure notice across the table. You thought I wouldn't find it? Emily's expression flickered, then she went cold. Dad, you're confused. Maybe you forgot. You signed those documents months ago. That was her play, gaslighting, calm and sweet. Ryan added, we're only trying to help. I leaned back. Help yourselves, you mean? Emily exhaled. You're making this difficult. We're family. Family? I said, laughing once. You sold your mother's roses before the funeral. Don't talk to me about family. Her face flushed. That was years ago. And this, I said, is just another sale. She stood shaking her head. Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't expect me to pick up the pieces when you lose everything. Ryan placed a business card on the table. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. They left together, her heels clicking like gunshots on marble. I sat there, staring at their untouched mimosas. For a moment I almost felt the old grief rise up, the urge to fix, to forgive, to call her back. But that man, the one who wanted peace, had died the night I opened that door. Now there was only silence. Heavy. Purposeful. I folded the foreclosure notice and slipped it into my coat. Then I asked for the check. The waiter looked nervous. Would you like me to clear the other glasses, sir? No, I said. Leave them. He nodded and walked away. I stared at the 2 glasses of untouched champagne. They sparkled in the sunlight like promises that were never real. And that's when I knew exactly what I'd do. The night after that brunch, I didn't sleep. The house creaked with the wind, the way old houses do when they sense trouble coming. I sat in the living room, lights off, fireplace cold, the papers spread across the table again. My so-called foreclosure notice, the forged signatures, the mortgage statements. I'd been through war, business takeovers, 2 recessions, and 1 divorce that nearly gutted me. But nothing felt like this. Because this wasn't an enemy. It was my own blood. At 2 in the morning, I poured another bourbon and stared at the family photo again. Emily at 10, hair full of sunlight, holding a toy hammer next to me as we fixed the porch railing together. She'd laughed when I told her. If you ever lose your way, just remember this house, it's our heart. I guess she remembered the wrong part. The bourbon tasted like smoke and memory. I turned the photo face down. That's when I knew, the man in that picture, the man who forgave, who explained, who hoped, was dead. And someone else had just taken his place. By sunrise I'd made a list. Not an emotional one. A practical one. 1. Confirm forgery. Get real evidence, not anger. 2. Trace motive. Find out what they truly want. 3. Reclaim control, legally, financially, strategically. 4. Deliver truth, not revenge by blood, but by exposure. Revenge was the word people use when they don't understand justice. I understood it perfectly. At 8:30 a.m., I called an old friend, James Holloway, my lawyer for the last 30 years. The kind of man who wore grief and loyalty in the same suit. He answered on the second ring. "Richard? You sound like a man about to start a war." "I am," I said. "And I need it done quietly." He sighed. "Emily again?" "She's not Emily anymore," I said. "She's paperwork and greed wearing my daughter's face. Come by the office in an hour." James's office smelled like old wood and sharper truth. He looked over the documents in silence, tapping a pen against the table. "Digital signature verified," he muttered. "But the notary ID is fake. And this clause," he pointed at a line halfway down the page, "this wasn't part of your original mortgage. Someone added it after submission." I said nothing. He kept reading. Finally, he sat back. "They used a shell company. Ryan's the primary contact. Looks like they refinanced the house under your name, pulled equity, and wired the funds to an LLC that doesn't technically exist anymore." "How much?" $480,000. I felt nothing. Not rage, not sadness. Just clarity. James looked at me carefully. "You want to press charges?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Then what do you want?" "I want them to think they've won." That night, I drove to the edge of town, the old repair shop that used to belong to my brother before he passed. I kept it all these years, empty, quiet, unnoticed. Perfect. The dust hit my throat as I opened the sliding door. Inside were boxes of old records, a cracked leather chair, and the faint smell of engine oil. I set up a small workspace, laptop, printer, files. My war room. I started with Ryan. A quick online search gave me everything. His LinkedIn bragging about real estate development, the photos of him posing with cars that weren't his, the fake smile beside investors who'd soon realize he'd been scamming them too. He was good at pretending, not great at covering tracks. He had 3 shell companies, all registered under relatives' names, and one active holding that was laundering money through property. Consulting. Classic greed, fast cash, thin paper trail. Emily, though, she wasn't in it for the money alone. She wanted validation. Power. The feeling of control after a childhood she'd once blamed me for. Her texts, emails, the tone of her voice, all told the same story. She wanted me to need her. And now, she'd made sure I didn't. A few days later, I visited the local bank, same one my father had opened my first account in. The branch manager, Susan, still remembered me. "Richard Carson," she said with a smile that faded fast when she saw my expression. "What can I do for you?" "I need to freeze everything connected to this account," I said, sliding the forged papers across the desk. "And I need it done before the end of the day." She read the top page. Her face went pale. This is your daughter's signature." "Supposedly," I said. She glanced around and lowered her voice. "We can initiate an internal audit, but you'll need to file a fraud claim." "I will," I said, "but not yet." She frowned. "Then what are you planning?" I smiled faintly. "A family reunion." That evening, I went home and opened the safe behind the study wall. Inside were old documents, the original deed, my wife's handwritten notes on renovations, and a will draft I'd never finalized. I took them out, spread them across the table, and rewrote the will. Every asset. Every share. Every dollar. Not to Emily. Not to anyone she'd ever touch. Instead, I established a new trust. The Carson Foundation, educational scholarships for veterans' children. Anonymous administrator, me. If Emily wanted my house, she could have the keys. But she'd never own the soul of it again. The next morning, James called. "We got confirmation from the notary board. The seal's a forgery. Ryan must have paid someone to generate the file." "Good," I said. "Richard," he hesitated. "Are you sure about staying quiet? We can press now." You'd win. Not yet, I repeated. They think I'm broken. Let them. Then what's next? I'm going to let them sell it. He paused. You're going to, what? I chuckled. Let them sell my house. To my buyer. At my price. And when the deal closes, I'll own everything they think they stole. James sighed. You're insane. Maybe, I said. But I'm not stupid. Days passed. Emily texted twice. Emily. Dad, hope you're doing okay. Emily. Just so you know, we're meeting the realtor on Thursday. No hard feelings. I didn't reply. I let the dots stay gray. On Wednesday, I made a call to an old client, David Beaumont, property investor, decent man with a taste for poetic justice. David, I said, I've got a house you might like. Beautiful oak tree, a bit of history attached. The sellers are young, greedy, and desperate. Interested? He laughed softly. Sounds like my favorite kind of deal. Good. But there's a twist. Oh? You'll buy it. But not for you. Then for who? For me. I said. Just don't tell them that yet. Thursday came. I watched from across the street as Emily and Ryan stood in the driveway, all smiles for the realtor. Emily wore a cream dress, pretending innocence. Ryan gestured like he was already rich. David arrived minutes later. Polite handshake, practice charm. The realtor led them inside, describing Southern character and family warmth. I could almost hear my wife laughing from the walls. The deal took less than an hour. I saw the papers change hands through the window reflection. Emily's laugh was bright, forced, triumphant. When they left, I stayed until their car disappeared down the road. Then I walked up the porch steps. My porch. The boards creaked the same way they always had. I opened the door. The scent of the house hit me, wood polish, faint dust, and something else, survival. In the quiet, I whispered, They think it's over. I looked around the living room one last time. The photo still face down. I didn't turn it over. Then I said it again, colder this time. They have no idea it's just beginning. I didn't touch the house for 2 days after the sale. Let them think they owned it. Let them celebrate. The trick to revenge isn't rage, it's patience dressed as surrender. On Monday morning, James called. They filed the deed transfer, he said. Emily and Ryan listed as primary beneficiaries of the sale, funds routed to a trust account under their LLC. You sure you're ready for this? I've been ready since the moment she forged my name. He sighed. David played his part perfectly. The documents show a full cash purchase through Beaumont Holdings. No trace of you. Good, I said. Now we make sure it stays that way, until I want it not to. By Wednesday, the town knew the story. Old Carson finally sold the house. Guess the daughter convinced him. Rumors traveled faster than truth, and I needed them to. At the diner, people I'd known for decades patted my shoulder, saying things like, Must feel strange letting go of that place. I just nodded and stirred my coffee. Stranger things have happened. Let them see me as the tired old man who gave up. It made the ending sweeter. That week, I started rebuilding my life from the shadows. First, I called David. He answered with a grin in his voice. So, Mr. Carson, how's it feel to buy your house twice? Like paying for a lesson I should have learned years ago. He chuckled. The title's clean. Deeds registered under Beaumont Holdings, and per our agreement, you're the silent owner. They won't know until you want them to. Keep it that way. And David, make sure the first tax notice goes to their LLC. I want them to start sweating before the match is even lit. Consider it done. Meanwhile, Emily and Ryan began redecorating. I knew because their realtor posted photos on social media. Another stunning transformation in the heart of Austin. New paint. New furniture. My wife's antique mirror replaced by some modern thing that looked like a prop in a reality show. Each image was a cut, small but deep. Still, I watched quietly. Every post, every caption, every tag. They thought they were crafting their new life. They didn't realize they were documenting evidence. A week later, I had lunch with James. He handed me a folder. Here's everything you asked for: transaction trails, Ryan's business filings, Emily's digital signature logs. I flipped through them. Good work. James leaned back. You planning to go public with this? Not yet. First, I need them to destroy themselves. He raised an eyebrow. And how do you plan to make that happen? By giving them exactly what they think they want, more. That night I called Ryan. He sounded surprised. Richard, this is unexpected. Don't flatter yourself, I said. I just wanted to say congratulations. He hesitated. Thank you. You got the house. Looks like things worked out. They did, he said, too proud too soon. Emily and I are doing some upgrades, thinking about flipping it in a few months. I smiled to myself. There it was, greed louder than gratitude. Well, I said, if you need anything, contractors, contacts, let me know. I still have a few old connections. He laughed. That's generous of you, sir. Don't call me sir. Of course. We said our goodbyes, but the seed was planted. I knew his type, the kind that can't resist one more easy deal. The next step was simpler than people imagine. I created temptation. Through a mutual friend, I arranged for a buyer, a foreign investor, with deep pockets and a short temper, to reach out to Ryan about the newly renovated property. The man's real name was Carlos Vega, an ex-client of mine who owed me a favor. I called him directly. Carlos, I need you to play the part of an impatient millionaire. He laughed. That's not a stretch. Good. Offer them a deal too good to be true. Cash payment, fast close, no inspections. But make sure it's conditional. Everything depends on the title being clean and undisputed. Carlos grinned through the line. So when the title isn't clean, they'll look like frauds. I finished. A week later, Emily posted another update. House sold. New beginnings ahead. Red heart #grateful. Perfect. They bit the hook. James confirmed it that afternoon. They signed the new purchase agreement with Vega Holdings. Deposits already wired. But Richard, this will implode fast once Vega's legal team runs the title. That's the point. He exhaled. You really planned this like a chess match. I sipped my coffee. No. Chess has rules. 2 days later, Emily called me for the first time in weeks. Dad, she started, her voice soft, practiced. I just wanted to say thank you. For being understanding. Understanding of what? Of everything. The house, the sale. I know it was hard. Not as hard as it'll be for you, I said quietly. She paused. What? Nothing. I'm glad things are working out. Ryan says we'll close next week, she said quickly, like she needed to prove something. We'll finally be able to buy our own place. I'm sure you will, I said and hung up. The next morning, James called again. Richard, we've got movement. Vega's lawyers flagged irregularities in the property chain. They're freezing the transaction pending investigation. Good. How long until it hits them? By tomorrow, they'll get a call from the bank. And the press? Already queued, he said. Local finance reporter owes me a favor. He'll publish the headline once the bank confirms the audit. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Let them burn slowly. No need to rush justice. That night, I walked by the old house. The windows glowed warm, laughter drifted out. Emily and Ryan were hosting a small dinner party. I could hear glasses clinking, music playing. From the sidewalk, it almost looked like happiness. But I knew better. Happiness built on lies has a short lease. I stayed in the shadows until they toasted. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the tone, self-congratulation wrapped in denial. When I turned to leave, a car slowed beside me. It was David. He rolled down his window. You really want to see them fall, don't you? I met his eyes. I want them to see themselves clearly for the first time. David nodded. You know, most people wouldn't have the stomach for this. Most people never had their daughter steal their soul for a down payment. The fallout began the next morning. Ryan's company accounts were frozen. The bank traced the earlier forged mortgage transfers and flagged them for fraud. Vega's lawyers filed a preliminary complaint for misrepresentation and breach of contract. By noon, Emily called again, this time panicked. Dad! Did you talk to the bank? I might have, I said evenly. Why? They're saying something's wrong with the sale. They froze the payment. Ryan's furious. Maybe the truth finally came due. Dad, please, this isn't funny. They're threatening legal action. Then you'd better get a lawyer, I said, and ended the call. I let her words hang in the quiet. It was the first time she'd sounded like the little girl who used to run to me crying, afraid of thunder. But now, the storm was hers. That evening, James and I met again. He spread the reports on his desk: bank statements, fraud notices, Vega's complaint, and the pending criminal inquiry into the forged signatures. They're cornered, he said. It's just a matter of time. Good. But don't pull the trigger yet. I want them to dig deeper. You mean? Yes, I said. They'll try to shift the blame. Probably say I was involved or complicit. That's when we drop the evidence. Every email, every fake document, every timestamp. James gave a dry laugh. You've turned this into theater. Not theater, I said, finishing my drink. Justice needs an audience. 3 days later, Emily showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her face since that brunch. She looked smaller somehow. Hair messy, eyes red. The cream dress replaced by a hoodie and exhaustion. Dad, she whispered. Please, can I come in? I stepped aside without a word. She sat on the same couch where we'd argued weeks earlier. Her hands trembled. Everything's gone. The deal fell through, Ryan's under investigation, the accounts are frozen. They're saying I could be charged too. I watched her quietly. Can you? She swallowed. Maybe. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Yes, you did, I said softly. You just didn't mean to lose. Her lip trembled. Dad, please, I'll fix it. I'll give it back. I leaned forward. You can't give back what you never understood. She stared at me, lost. What do you want from me? I stood, walked to the mantel, and turned the family photo face up again. The dust framed our smiles in irony. I want you, I said, to remember who taught you that every lie has a price. She didn't speak. When she left, the air smelled like rain again. Outside, thunder rolled low and slow, a promise. I picked up the phone and called James. It's time, I said. Release everything. They always expect the man who plans revenge to be loud about it, shouting in courtrooms, smashing plates, hurling accusations. That's drama for other people. My work was quieter. Surgical. The point is to make the truth land so cleanly they can't deny it with a lie. On the morning I chose, the sky was a dull pewter, the kind that makes people hurry with umbrellas. I met James at the courthouse steps before anyone else arrived. He handed me a thick folder with a case number stamped on the front like an executioner's mark. You sure you want this public? He asked. I want them to stand in the same light they used to shine onto me, I said. I want neighbors to hear, friends to read, and for them to see themselves reflected honestly. He nodded. We'll present the fraud package, plus the forensics, timestamps, notary logs, IP traces. That should get a judge to issue an injunction on any further transfers. Do it, I said. We walked into the clerk's office together, practiced and calm. The receptionist raised an eyebrow when she saw me. People still expected me to be the defeated old man. James filed the complaint and handed copies to the DA. Everything was in order. The original deed, the forged signatures, the shell company trails, Ryan's wire transfers, and emails where he bragged about fast returns. By noon, there were papers in enough hands that discretion dissolved. They called a press conference before the criminal complaint hit the paper. I didn't plan that. James did. Prudence gives way to momentum. A local reporter who'd once written a flattering piece about my business sense showed up. He looked uncomfortable. He'd known my wife and once praised our garden. "Mr. Carson," he said, microphone poised, "is it true you're accusing your daughter of forgery?" I looked at him, then at the cluster of faces, neighbors, reporters, a man from Vega Holdings with his own lawyer, and Emily, who had come with Ryan standing stiffly beside her. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." A murmur went through the crowd, pity, then curiosity, then a small, sharp pleasure at scandal. Emily's face blanched. Ryan's jaw set. "You understand the consequences?" the reporter pressed. "I do," I said. "And I understand my responsibility. I didn't want this, but I won't let a lie stand." James stepped forward with evidence. Notarized logs showing the forged ID, bank records tracing the outgoing funds to Ryan's LLC, and an email chain where Ryan suggested ways to smooth over a signature issue. A woman in the crowd gasped. Somebody muttered, "My God!" Cameras rolled. Emily tried to speak. "Dad, you can't. You forged my name," I said. "You sold my house. You committed fraud." Her voice cracked. It was supposed to be temporary. We were only going to refinance." "To get what?" I asked, watching her very closely. "To cut me out? To make me believe I was broken so you could fix the pieces?" She folded in on herself like a bird in a storm. Ryan, hunting for some center of gravity, said, "We didn't mean. You didn't mean to be found out," I finished. "There's a difference." The DA moved fast. They opened a preliminary inquiry within 48 hours. Subpoenas went out. The bank froze accounts. Vega's lawyers threatened civil action. Ryan's landlord called to say he'd found additional suspicious transfers from his account. It was a web of small lies that fed each other until the whole thing strangled. On day 3, they arrested the notary, a man with 2 failed businesses and a gambling problem, and when he started talking, the strings unraveled faster than any of us expected. He fingered Ryan as the architect, Emily as the accomplice who promised the personal details he needed. Ryan's face went white. He sat in the police interview room and tried to keep his composure, but sweat beaded down his temple. He insisted he'd been advised and guided by others. For a while, he tried to throw the blame at crooked bankers and rogue contractors. No one believed it. Emily, when she was finally called in, cried for most of the interrogation. Real tears, not the practiced ones of a PR statement. She said she'd been stupid, caught up, thinking it would fix everything. The DA's notes quoted her. "I didn't think anyone would get hurt." The way she said it made everyone remember the little girl who used to pick dandelions in the yard, the memory that shamed her confession. At the hearing, the judge read the counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, money laundering. The gavel sounded heavier than it had any right to. I sat through it like a man who has watched a long play and reached the act where the villain finally reads the script. My chest was tight, but my hand didn't tremble. I watched Emily in the defendant's chair and saw how small she was under the fluorescent lights. She avoided my gaze. Sometimes, she'd look up and find mine anyway, and in those moments I felt something like sorrow wedge into my ribs. Then came the fallout that no legal document could fully account for, the social collapse. Neighbors who used to wave turned their backs. Friends I'd shared barbecues with called and said they needed time. Social media piled on. Someone found old posts where Emily had mocked small-town values. Another dug up a photo Ryan had doctored to make himself look philanthropic. People love a rise and fall story, and ours fit the mold. Vega Holdings withdrew its offer publicly and demanded restitution. The realtor who had facilitated the sale lost her license pending review. Ryan's business partners severed ties. A man who'd wanted to flip my life now watched his name dragged through public filings and headlines. But the thing that mattered The private reckoning was the hardest part for them. Emily's friends stopped answering her calls. Her mother-in-law, who had once texted me recipes, sent a brief, cold message. "This is not the family we thought." She meant me, too, in a way I hadn't anticipated. One night, a reporter caught Ryan leaving the courthouse. He looked broken, eyes darting, shame sitting in his shoulders like a heavy coat. The microphone in the reporter's hand felt obscene. "Any statement?" the reporter asked. He mumbled something about mistakes, about making amends, about lessons learned. The clip went viral in town. Emily called me that evening. She said, "Dad, please, we can fix this. Tell them I can return the money. Tell them." "Return what?" I asked. "1,000 small cuts? A forged signature? You can return the cash, Emily, but you can't return a reputation. You can't give me back nights of worry, or my wife's face on the mantel. You've burned a bridge that took me 50 years to build." She sobbed. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to show I could do something, anything, to make you proud. You were always proud enough for me," I said. "Pride isn't a currency." She said nothing for a long time. The line went dead. The prosecution offered a plea deal after mediation. Emily could avoid a felony charge if she cooperated, surrendered assets, and worked within a court-mandated restitution plan. Ryan, who'd been the linchpin, got a harsher offer, charges on the money laundering counts, and a likely prison sentence if convicted. The courtroom felt smaller that day when Emily stood to accept the plea. She looked like someone who had finally understood that the cost of certain gains is always higher than you think. She read the statement prepared by the DA: contrition, admission, promise to make amends. I sat a few rows back, fingers interlaced, jaw clenched. Afterwards, people crowded near the exits. I heard whispers. He did the right thing. He forced the truth out. He let his daughter see it for herself. Some called it cold, others necessary. James touched my shoulder as we left. "You wanted them to see themselves." "They did," I said. He stared at me. "Does it feel like relief?" I thought about the house, empty now, held in trust. I thought about my wife's laugh and the smell of pine-scrubbed sheets. I thought about long afternoons and the way a child once leaned on my knee. "It feels like a clean thing," I admitted. "Not joy. Not vindication. Clean. Like the wound has been seen." 2 months later, the DA closed the active investigation against me. I'd been exonerated publicly, a small notice in the county paper clearing my name. The story slid into background noise. Ryan faced sentencing and, in the end, drew a sentence that taught him what hunger felt like in a cell. Emily served community restitution, therapy, and a long, slow attempt at rebuilding a life without the easy currency of other people's trust. I don't pretend the outcome erased anything. There were nights I woke up and saw their faces over and over, thinking of what might have been if she'd chosen a different path. My grief didn't vanish. It shifted. The house? It sat empty for a while. I could have reclaimed it entirely, legally and publicly, but some things deserve distance. Instead, I set up the trust I'd drafted: scholarships, maintenance funds, an anonymous caretaker to keep the garden. The physical building remained, but its soul belonged to something larger. When I walked past the old oak a month later, grasses flattened by autumn wind, I felt the echo of laughter and of a hammer struck by a child's hand. It stung. But it didn't break me. I had broken something, yes. But the thing I broke was a deceit that would have eaten us from the inside out. Silence came gradually, like dawn through fog, not sudden, not clean. For months after the verdict, I still woke at 4 in the morning expecting a fight, expecting the next document, the next call, the next small betrayal dressed as apology. But the war had ended. And like any survivor, I didn't quite know what to do with the quiet. The papers were filed, the accounts cleared, the house legally mine again, though the word mine had stopped meaning what it used to. Victory, it turns out, isn't loud. It's a slow exhale you barely notice. I'd won back my home, my name, my dignity, and lost something softer I wasn't sure I'd ever find again. Most evenings I sat on the back porch, watching the sky bruise into purple. The oak tree out front stood exactly where it always had, roots deep, branches sprawling like open arms. It was older than all of us, wiser too. I used to think that if a house had a soul, it lived in its walls. Now I knew better. It lived in the things that stayed upright after the storm. Neighbors sometimes stopped by, mostly out of curiosity disguised as kindness. "How are you holding up, Richard?" they'd ask, half whispering. I'd smile. "Better than the headlines said." They'd chuckle awkwardly and talk about weather. But at night, when the porch light flickered, I'd find myself talking to the ghosts instead, my wife, mostly. "Guess I did it, honey," I'd murmur. "Got the house back. Got the truth out." The wind through the oak would sound almost like her voice, sighing, "Was it worth it?" That was the question no court could answer. I decided to restore one room, the old study she and I used to share. Not for sentimentality, but because dust carries memory, and I needed to face it. I boxed up what was left of Emily's things, her childhood drawings, a faded postcard she'd written from summer camp. On the back, she'd scribbled, "Can't wait to come home." I traced the ink with my thumb, feeling the irony sting. The realtor had offered to stage the property for sale again, for symbolic closure. I refused. I'd kept the foundation alive in her name instead, the Carson Oak Fund. Scholarships for kids who'd lost parents to debt or war. Because sometimes, the only way to clean blood from history is to let someone else build on the same ground. Still, I couldn't stay. The house was a monument now, not a home. It had seen too much truth to be comfortable. One morning in early spring, I found a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting stopped me cold. "Emily. Dad, I don't know if you'll ever want to see me again. I've been in therapy, and they keep telling me to face what I did. It's hard, because every time I think I'm ready, I remember your face that day in court, calm, but so far away. You were right. I didn't mean to lose, that's what I regret most. Not the crime, not even the punishment, but the arrogance that made me think I could handle the fire I started. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know, I'm working to deserve being your daughter again. Slowly. Love, Emily." I read it 3 times. By the 4th, the paper had started to blur. Not from tears, just from age, maybe. Paper, like people, weakens in the same places it's folded too often. That evening I called her. She picked up on the first ring. "Dad?" Her voice was careful, like someone walking barefoot across glass. "It's me," I said. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't hostile. Just fragile. "I got your letter," I said finally. "I didn't know if you'd read it," she whispered. "I did. You wrote it like someone who means it." "I do." "Then that's enough for now." There was a tremor in her voice. "I'm sorry I hurt you." "I know," I said. "I just wish you trusted me before you tried to destroy me." Her breath caught. "So do I." We talked for hours, about the past, about her work, about the people she was helping now. She told me she'd started painting again, small watercolors for hospital walls. Her mother would have liked that. When the call ended, I didn't feel lighter exactly, but I felt cleaner. Like the wound had stopped bleeding even if it hadn't yet closed. Weeks later, she came back to Austin. She asked if she could see the house one last time before it became part of the foundation's property. When she stepped inside, she froze in the hallway. "Smells the same," she whispered. "It's the oak," I said. "Keeps everything grounded." We walked through the rooms quietly. The sunlight caught the dust in golden ribbons. When we reached the kitchen, she stopped by the window and pressed her hand to the counter. "I used to sit here when Mom made pancakes," she said. "She'd burn half of them on purpose," I said. "Said the cats liked the crispy ones?" Emily laughed, a soft, real sound. I hadn't heard it in years. Then she turned to me, eyes glistening. "Do you ever wish I'd never come back that night?" I shook my head. "No. Because if you hadn't, I never would have seen what I'd lost. Sometimes the only way to clean a wound is to reopen it. She nodded, silent. When she left, she hugged me, tighter this time, with both arms and no hesitation. Her voice cracked against my shoulder. Thank you for not giving up on me. I almost did, I said honestly. But then I remembered you were still my daughter. That was the truth of it. You don't stop loving your blood, you just learn to love it from a safer distance. The foundation took ownership of the house in late May. They asked if I wanted to attend the ceremony. I said yes. A group of children planted flowers under the oak, yellow marigolds bright against the green. Emily helped them dig the soil. I stood nearby, hands in pockets, feeling both old and strangely young. A journalist came up to me afterward. Mr. Carson, any final words about this chapter of your life? I looked toward Emily, sleeves rolled up, laughter easy again, a streak of dirt across her cheek. She's my final word, I said. Everything else was just the preface. That made the paper's front page the next day. But I didn't read the story. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I packed a small suitcase and boarded a plane west. No destination that mattered, just movement. The world looked different from above, tidy, forgiving. You can't see betrayal from 30,000 feet. Only rivers, forests, and towns that seem closer together than they really are. The flight attendant asked if I wanted anything to drink. Coffee, I said. Black. She smiled. Turbulence might be a little rough. I smiled back. Ma'am, I've had worse. When the plane lifted through the clouds, the sunlight hit the wing like fire. Below, the river curved through Austin like a scar that had learned to heal without disappearing. I took the photo from my pocket, Emily at 10, laughing in front of the oak tree, and set it on the tray table. For a moment, I thought about how everything circles back: pain, love, justice, forgiveness, all part of the same current. You can't separate them without losing the river entirely. When the plane leveled, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the hum of the engines fill the spaces that used to echo with anger. I whispered to no one. You reap what you sow. But this time, there was no bitterness in it, only peace. Revenge hadn't healed me. It never does. But it had given me something quieter, something I hadn't expected: clarity. The clarity to see that truth, once exposed, doesn't just punish, it purifies. It burns through illusion until only the essential remains. And when you've stripped everything else away, the pride, the pain, the names, what's left is the simplest thing of all. A father. A daughter. And the long road back to love. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The stewardess smiled. I folded the photo, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and whispered, "Home isn't a place. It's what you make peace with." Then I looked out the window, and for the first time in years, the horizon looked like something I could finally walk toward. If this story moved you, please support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment with your thoughts. To continue the journey, click the box on the left for the next story. Thank you for being here.